Buzz.
Hello and welcome to MMA Buzz Episode 3. We are coming to you the day after Dos Anjos versus Cerrone 2, UFC on Fox 17. We've got a lot to talk about. If you're new to MMA Buzz, we are three friends getting together for some beers to talk about MMA, upcoming events, and industry news. Coming to you pre-recorded from our Fredericton, New Brunswick studio on the east coast of Canada. Now, usually there's three of us, but today you only get two. Greb's out slaving away at the mall. So joining me today is
Nick Brown.
And I am Rodney Mann. Wow, we've got a lot to talk about, but let's start, as usual, with what we are drinking. I, myself, have a Monkey Fist IPA from Shipyard Brewing Company in Portland, Maine, just south of us in the grand old United States of America.
I'm drinking a Winter Warmer from Picaroon's Brewery here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. It's their take on a classic English barley wine, and it is delicious.
It is really good. That was not him farting, that was my couch. So cheers, man. Let's kick off episode 4. We're doing it. It's episode 3. Not 4. It's alright. It's okay. Most of you will be tuning in for the first time this episode anyways. If you are new, thank you for checking us out. Make sure to like and share. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, MMA Buzz Radio on Facebook and YouTube. Tell your friends, pass it around. And if you don't like it, let us know why. We want to know. We want your constructive feedback so we can make it better. So yeah, like I said, coming to you after UFC on Fox 17, Dos Anjos versus Cerrone. We saw Overeem on the card fighting Junior Dos Santos. We've got Nate Diaz, Michael Johnson to talk about, and of course Nate Marquardt, being the underdog that he was, surprising everybody, knocking out CB Dalloway. Of course, we've got our full Bladder Splatter and our Half Cut Uppercut coming at the end of the show, so make sure to stick around and see who we thought were the biggest dark horses and who pissed the bed the most. So yeah, let's hop into it. Top of the card, Rafael Dos Anjos, Donald Cerrone, RDA, improving to 25-7 with a pretty impressive performance against Donald Cerrone. Cowboy, for those who like to call him by his nickname. Even the poster had Cowboy on it. This fight was pretty much a lopsided affair. I had Cerrone winning it by submission. I kind of just picked that to be the odd duck out in the room, and I couldn't have been further from what actually happened. Nick, first impressions of this fight?
I actually thought Cerrone was going to win this one as well. I thought he had, an 8-fight win streak after his last fight against Dos Anjos. And, yeah, he was not impressive in this fight.
No. Was he not impressive? It was RDA. I think RDA had his game plan on full bore, full steam ahead. If anybody called RDA from the start, it was definitely Trevor. He's not here to tell you how much he is an RDA fanboy, but, he said it about 1,000 times last night, so I can tell you he is an RDA fanboy from the start. Been watching this guy on the come up, and if he was here today, like I say, he would be going into great detail about the history of RDA and why he deserves to be where he is and why he was not surprised at all with the way that the fight went down. Personally, I thought we were going to see more more attack and more offense from Donald Cerrone.
That's what I thought too, and RDA came out really strong. He was aggressive right from the get-go, and I guess it paid off, first round TKO.
Yeah, after the last fight, that was such a tepid start. These guys seemed like they were coming right out of the gate, guns blazing. Looks like Cerrone couldn't really find his rhythm, couldn't really deal with the speed of Dos Anjos, Dos Anjos was really advancing the fight the entire time. Landed that knee. That was really the most pivotal part. Even Cerrone said at the end of the fight, that knee is what buckled him, and he was hurt.
Oh, he was definitely hurt. And that improves RDA to a 5-fight win streak now. So we'll see where Cerrone goes from here, but
yeah, I still think Cerrone's on top of the division. I think this loss does not look good for him. I think people will be quick to point to all of his extra fighting activities like wakeboarding and flying jets and such. But, I think that's actually a good thing for him. I don't think that's actually a hindrance. The guy, that's just the way he lives. And really, I just think that RDA is better than Cerrone after watching that fight. RDA's on top of it, and from all the allegations Cerrone put out there about him using PEDs and all this kind of stuff, and how after the USADA generation started that we would see RDA, looking flabby or, not looking the same. He wouldn't pass the eyeball test well. I would say that he looked just as good as his previous fight, and even the fights before that. That guy hasn't changed at all.
Oh, he definitely did, and I mean, Cerrone's still at the top of the division. It's just, there's that obstacle he can't get past, and I don't know who they're going to put him up against next.
Well, I think I know. I think it's going to be a Pettis and Cowboy fight, because both those guys got schooled by RDA. Pettis could come out and really impress and maybe, get his name in the title shot right away where he is the former champion. But at this juncture, I think that those two guys need to duke it out. Maybe we get a Cowboy RDS 3. I mean, we've already seen Cain Velasquez and JDS 3, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities that they would do a third fight, but I don't see it happening this year. And really, the way that Cerrone fought in the last 2 years, I think he should have gotten his taxes cleared up. I believe that was the issue of why he was fighting so much, and he would probably benefit from a little bit of time off.
Yeah, he may take some time off and reconsider his game plan. He might get a third fight against RDA at some point. Definitely not this year coming up, I don't think. It's possible in the future. We'll see where he goes from here.
It's kind of interesting to think that from this fight, the most fallout isn't really in the division. It's more of the whole Conor moving up that is a concern now for RDA more than anybody in his division, which I think it's an interesting time to be a UFC fan where this is even an option. Like that there's one champion who's going to challenge the champion of the other division as soon as he won his championship before defending his own championship in his division. So, I don't know if that's the fight they make or if they're just setting up future storylines, because I really do think it's a disservice to not give Edgar the title shot after the last weekend's events. But if they do end up putting Cerrone versus RDS, sorry, not Cerrone, McGregor versus RDS, then yeah, I say we give Cowboy and Pettis a shot to get the number one challenger out of the way.
I think Cowboy and Pettis would be a pretty good fight. It's really hard to say if McGregor's going to come up and try to fight RDA or if he will defend his championship. There's lots of other guys that they can put him up against in his own division.
Do you think we'll see maybe a Nate Diaz fight with Cowboy?
Nate Diaz thinks there's going to be a Nate Diaz fight with Cowboy.
Nate Diaz wants the McGregor fight, man. I think he made that painfully obvious in his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan. But we'll get to that. We're spoiling it. Sorry. We're going to keep going down the card, though. We got Alistair Overeem knocking out Junior Dos Santos. A pretty tepid fight to begin with. It was really a lot of feeling out, a lot of mutual respect. JDS going into this fight with 3 losses on his record, all against the same person, Cain Velasquez, completely spotless record against anybody else. And we saw Alistair going into that fight looking pretty good. He's on the last fight of his contract, ready to put his career on the line for this fight. Obviously felt very confident, and it showed. JDS couldn't find his space. He couldn't get his distance right. I found anyways. It looked like Alistair was really dictating the pace. He did a lot of sticking and moving and a lot of frustrating and moving around in circles around JDS, which kind of tired him out, I think.
The first round was probably the most intense round of fighting I've ever seen that had, I would say, less than 10 strikes thrown.
Yeah.
They were definitely feeling each other out for a while, but when they started going, they really started going.
Yeah, once those punches started getting thrown, it was pretty much any of those could knock somebody out.
Oh yeah, those are big guys, and they were throwing big shots.
Yeah, big heavy kicks too. There was a lot of kicks thrown.
I found that a lot of the kicks Dos Santos were throwing were really telegraphed. You could see it coming a mile away.
Yeah, it was probably an effect of the cardio that, Alistair was showing and running around in circles and keeping Dos Santos on the outside, trying to keep after him and everything. And yeah, I think it really played out that his cardio just wasn't up to the test. And it was obvious in his attacks, especially the kicks. They looked labored. We're being super critical, I guess, but JDS looked great going into that fight.
He did. I thought he was going to win that fight. I did kind of want to see Overeem win it. I wouldn't have been disappointed either way. But predictions before the fight, I thought Dos Santos had it.
Yeah, he looked really good, a lot leaner. He looked like he was really paying attention to his striking. The thing is that Alistair just always looks the same, and he's just such a chill guy, you know? Just like very hard to read him, and it's just obvious that he brought his A game. I think the fact that he didn't negotiate his contract made him have sort of a do or die kind of approach, which is why he might have been a little bit hesitant to attack in the first round, knowing that those are that's Dos Santos' most strong time to like attack in the first. So yeah, I think it was a good game plan by Overeem, and I'm excited to see what happens with him, because he did mention he wanted to make his title run in the UFC. I think that that could have been a little bit of marketing, a little bit of soundbite planting right there, so he can go in and negotiate a better term now that he's got that soundbite, and because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people bidding on Overeem.
Yeah, there will be, and it's just interesting to see where he goes from here. I'd like to see him stay in the UFC, but you never know. He did say in the post-fight interview that he wasn't really thinking about the future before this fight. He was just planning for this fight, and he would see what happens after.
Yeah, of course, it's easy to say that when you win.
Yeah, it sure is.
All right, speaking of what you say after you win, let's transition over to Nate Diaz versus Michael Johnson. So a little bit of lead up to the fight. There was actually a little bit of a fight in the lobby before the fight where I believe it was Josh Saman who had a videotape, or no, it was Josh Saman's opponent, Barncat, McCrory. He had a video of the altercation, and there was a little bit of shoving. Nate shoving Michael Johnson away from him with his friends around him, and Johnson calling him, a pussy, being surrounded by his friends, bringing the fight to him in the lobby before the fight, getting into his head. But it appears like it worked, and he really didn't take his foot off the gas by the time, I'm speaking of Nate here, by the time he got into the octagon, and the shit-talking just kept coming. And it really, I think, threw Michael Johnson off his game. Nate Diaz looked like the best Nate Diaz we have ever seen, in my opinion.
Nate Diaz looked great the entire fight. He dominated Michael Johnson, which I didn't expect. I thought that was going to be a really even matchup, but it was fairly one-sided for the entire fight.
Yeah, Michael Johnson usually comes in sort of like that death by 1,000 paper cuts style, very smart with his attack, and usually pretty good about dictating the pace. He had a very impressive streak coming into this fight. Well, actually, he came off a loss, but he had a streak before that. And Nate Diaz, of course, not fighting since losing to the champion Rafael dos Anjos in literally a year before, same month in 2014. And he got embarrassed in that fight. But Nate Diaz, I think, back on top, just bringing the Diaz game to the fight. So much so that the ref had to tell him to stop swearing at him. But maybe he stopped in the ring because he obviously didn't get penalized. But by the time that Joe Rogan put that microphone in front of him in the post-fight interview, and he had this crazy exploit-laden call out for Conor McGregor, I believe you have it written down. So why don't you tell the people what Nate Diaz had to say for Conor?
Fuck that Conor McGregor. You're taking everything I worked for, motherfucker. I'm gonna fight your fucking ass. You know what's the real fight? What's the real money fight is me, not these clowns that you already punked in the press conference. Don't no one want to see that. You know you beat them already. That's the easy fight, but the real shit is right here. And then Joe pulled the mic away and told him he can't talk like that on Fox, so that was all we got to hear of that.
Yeah, to Joe's credit, he kept the mic in front of him without Nate holding his hand there at the end of his profane-laden call-out, and he didn't move it. And you can be guaranteed someone was in his earpiece saying, "Get that mic out of his face! Get that mic down! Get that mic down!" But props to him. He kept it there and he let it all happen. I think those guys are friends outside of the octagon, so that probably had a little bit to do with it. But making the most of that 30-second soundbite opportunity. Not too many people are going to be able to turn heads as much as the Diaz brothers, and they've been doing it for years. I think he's got a point that Conor is borrowing a page out of the Diaz playbook to gain fans, get in people's heads, gain that mental advantage. It's something people have been talking about, namely the guys on Fight Network, Robin Black, have been talking about it for a couple of years. The mental advantage going into a fight for all these fighters goes a long ways, and the Diaz brothers are a prime example of that. They've been doing it for not over, but close to a decade. Well, Nick actually has been fighting over a decade, so there you are. They've been doing it for some time, and, Conor's just coming in, and he's got the same style, and Nate's right. He is getting everything Nate worked for, but I think there was a little bit of, rocky roads there with the UFC and the Diaz brothers when they lost, when Nick lost to GSP. And, there were sour grapes about how much they were getting paid and everything. So, I think that it would be good to see that fight. I want to see Nate and Conor. I hope that fight happens eventually.
The Diaz brothers definitely have had some issues with the UFC, but I think the Diaz brothers would have some issues with any organization they're fighting for. Mm-hmm. They are the way they are, and they're not going to change. And I love them for it.
Yeah, man. Like, Nate Diaz's boxing looked so fucking good in that fight. Michael Johnson really just looked like a noob in there, just getting lit up. It's like combos while taunting him. Yeah. Crossing his arms over his chest and everything, just looking like a serious badass.
Turning his back to him.
Yeah, like, I don't know what we do with Michael Johnson after this. I feel like he's just going to, come back and fight another good, maybe top 15, top 10 opponent. And I think the future's still bright for him. And as far as Nate's concerned, I think they're gonna put the gas pedal to the metal and really make take advantage of the Diaz brothers while they're here. I mean, Nick's gonna be out for another 2.5 years. They got to get Nate in there just to keep us all happy here in the public eye and public forum.
Yeah, he'll definitely be back soon, I think.
Yeah.
If he had his way, he would have been back already.
Well, I have a feeling that because he couldn't renegotiate his contract, that he is going to fight out his contract quick and then renegotiate a new contract. So yeah, let's keep going. Keeping with the Nates, we got Nate Marquardt versus CB Dollaway. Nate Marquardt, huge underdog coming into this fight. He knocks CB Dollaway out. Biggest upset on the card, I think. Improves to 34-15. Nate not looking too good. 2 wins and 7 outings. CB definitely the favorite, like I mentioned, coming into this fight. Can Nate keep the steam after this fight? Does he have another title run in him? And what do we do with CB?
I don't know if Nate's got another title run in him or not. I mean, coming off 2 losses and then his win before that was off 3 losses. We'll see where he goes. It'd be nice to see him keep going.
Yeah.
CB Dollaway, he definitely was the favorite coming in. Got to keep your hands up, though.
Yeah.
he dove into that right hand face first.
Yeah. That's just one of those prime examples, sort of like last weekend where we saw Damian Maia upset Gunnar Nelson. It's like one of those expected passing at the guard fights, and instead the veterans pull through and get a victory, a very impressive victory in the process.
That was a very impressive victory, and it just goes to show, some of these guys that are coming up and just blazing their way through the ranks, well, they've still got some stuff to learn.
Yeah. And
Nate Marquardt's a veteran, and he saw his opportunity.
That's the best part about fighting, man. Anybody can win on any given day. So yeah, that's all I really want to talk about the card. Before we move into our segments, our half cut uppercut and our full bladder splatter, what stood out for you on this card? What was your standout?
Well, Tamden McCrory had a pretty impressive triangle choke against Josh Saman, and we haven't seen him in UFC since UFC 101 in 2009. It was a great re-entry into the UFC after 2 wins in Bellator, which I believe he took some time off before he fought those Bellator fights. So
yeah, he definitely did. Yeah, I thought that was a great fight. Definitely a good call-out. My standout was Charles Oliveira's laid-back guillotine. That was the most stylish chokeout I've seen since the early prelims in the night, and we had that on Anaconda. Let's kind of move into our first segment. The half cut uppercut. Who was your dark horse of the night, Nick?
My dark horse of the night was Vicente Luque, fighting Hader Hassan for the second time. The first time in the Ultimate Fighter finale, I believe. He lost a decision fight that he didn't think he should have lost. He said he didn't want to leave it to the judges this time, and he didn't. That was a crazy anaconda choke.
Yeah, that backflip was really high level. He did mention, like, as soon as he got his grasp in, that he knows that he's not going to let it go. That was, if you haven't seen that was definitely one that flew under the radar, being on the early preliminaries. Check it out.
Yeah, he had that choke in before he even thought about taking him to the ground, and he flipped him right over and just, he executed it perfectly.
Yeah, Luque, I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, Luque stuffs a takedown attempt, but goes directly into the anaconda choke, and then tucks in, pulls guard, flips him over top of him, and lands perfectly in the anaconda side control, or sort of like a crucifix, sort of north-south crucifix style. It's on Fight Pass. If you've got Fight Pass, so check it out. My half cut uppercut, dark horse, coming also in the early prelims, is Francis Gnou, fighting out of Paris, France, by way of Cameroon. This guy had the craziest reach advantage against his opponent. Both of these men making their UFC debuts. He was making his debut against Enrique. This guy looked like he was straight out of a video game, just cut, and the sequences that he would come out with, like the combinations, it was just kind of... It was a little bit slow in the first one, but they did have a lot of good wrestling, grappling exchanges. But once the second round came and he wobbled him, Enrique that is, he just went for the kill, and it was a really impressive uppercut knockout.
It was a great knockout. He throws impressive combinations for a guy his size. You don't see too many heavyweights throwing, 5 or 6 punches in a row like that. Any of them with the power to knock someone out.
Yeah, it was full bore every single fight, or every single punch. And it was actually kind of nice to hear somebody interviewed in French in the octagon. I don't really remember the last person I heard that needed a French translator. It was just kind of nice to hear my mother tongue.
I was thinking that when I watched it this morning, actually.
Yeah, it's definitely a Portuguese and Spanish and English dominated fight. Scene is mixed martial arts, and really a lot more coming out of Russia too. So, but you don't really hear much out of any sort of Parisian countries or French countries, especially Paris. So let's move into our next segment. The full bladder splatter. Who pissed the bed? Nick, who was the biggest pisser of the bed in UFC on Fox 17?
Michael Johnson pissed the bed pretty hard against Nate Diaz. What I thought was going to be it was a great matchup, but I thought it was going to be a more even matchup. Turned into a very one-sided fight for Diaz very quickly.
Yeah, it did not look good for Michael Johnson there by the end of it.
No, I mean, we already went through this fight quite a bit, so I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, that's true. Well, my full bladder splatter, who I think pissed the bed the most, the Canadian, Sarah Kaufman. That fight went the distance. She fought a very talented and unheard of Valentina Shevchenko. I hope I'm not butchering that. Shevchenko, I believe is how you say it. And coming into a fight 8 days notice, you're fighting a top 5 opponent. You do not expect to go the distance, let alone win in that decision. I thought that Valentina showed a lot of good grappling ability. I think it's great to see another Polish fighter in the ring. She obviously has heard of Jan Jacek, the current champion in her division, and I think if she can keep improving and looking the way she did, I think that she might be able to maybe fight her in the future. But yeah, I'm going with Sarah Kaufman, full bladder splatter. She did not look up to the test against somebody on short notice. And it's not like she was, I get the feeling that she was really readying herself for one particular style and then couldn't handle the other style, because the other was the person who she was replacing was a wrestler anyway. So
yeah, she just didn't seem like she was ready for that fight at all. I mean, 8 days notice and looking very impressive on 8 days notice. So
yeah.
Sarah
for a fight that went the distance, it really wasn't that bad. So yeah, so concludes our UFC on Fox 17 review. Let's just check on our beers. How's your beer doing?
My beer's delicious. I haven't drank much of it, but
yeah,
I'll get it in me.
It's a sipper. It's definitely not a smasher.
It is a sipper.
Yeah, barley wine. If you haven't tried it yet, try it. That's Picaroons out of Fredericton. Picaroons Boutique in Fredericton. And you can find them on Facebook, Pickaroons, and of course, Shipyard. You can find them on Facebook. And you can find us on Facebook and YouTube, MMA Buzz Radio. Tell your friends, like it, share it. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. Be constructive with your feedback so we can make it better for you, the listeners. I know we've got a few repeat listeners, and we want to thank you guys for tuning in every single episode. We're going to keep this going into the new year. Coming up next for MMA Buzz Radio in a week, we're going to do our year in review for 2015. Take a look at our favorite fights, our favorite events, our favorite news. We're going to have a yearly full bladder splatter, see who's the biggest bed pisser of the year. We're going to have our yearly Half Cut Uppercut, find out who was the best dark horse of 2015, and we're going to take a look into 2016, the fights we already know about, the fights we want to see, the events that we already know about, and the events we want to see, what we want to see happen in MMA as a whole, not just the UFC, although it seems like we're specifically paying attention to UFC, but it's because of International Fight Week, it's because of time. We know World Series of Fighting was on Friday, and it was awesome. Definitely a great way to go out for those guys at the end of the year. But unfortunately, due to time, we can't cover it, but we will be covering it moving forward. That's 2016 MMA Buzz Radio. Tell your friends. We're going to have one more episode in 2015, and we hope to see you back for it. Also, moving into 2016, we're going to have guests, and we're going to try to get this onto a video feed so you guys can tune in live, maybe after the fact. We'll definitely try to get a video for you within January, the first month of 2016. I'm just excited. Here I am. I feel like I've been talking nonstop. Nick, do you got anything to say to these guys before we say goodbye?
Well, I think you just about covered it, but thanks for listening, everybody, and hope you check it out again.
Right on. Here's to cheers. Episode 3 in the books.
MMA Buzz. Brought to you by The Beach Radio.